Hello, friends and cinema lovers. I'm writer-director C.S.Nag, speaking on behalf of Indian Renaissance. And in this second episode, we are going to address the issue: how can Indian Renaissance become more lucrative for Hollywood? Last year, in 2019, the Indian cinema film industry confirmed its position as the world's largest film industry and largest producing country, with close to 2,000 feature films. This is as much as the next three countries, the United States, Japan, and China, put together. The largest component of this was 370 films made in Hindi, which was more than 40% of the total output. In ticket sales as well as revenues, the BFI set a world record with 3.6 billion tickets sold compared to Hollywood's 2.6 billion. But the revenues were a fraction of those earned in the US on account of the very low ticket price in India as compared to those in the US, and also the dollar value. In Europe and China, it's the same case, and virtually most major film markets in the world. Although total Indian annual revenues at roughly $2 billion are a pittance compared to the same amount earned by a single Hollywood film all over the world, out of trillions that the Hollywood film industry earns globally, it has shown a steady increase of 13% over the past decade because Indian markets are expanding globally for Hindi cinema. This is despite the fact that most Indian films barely recover their enormous cost of investment, and only a few are lucky enough to get a super hit status by turning in a modest profit of $20 to $25 million or 100 crores or thereabouts. This 13% annual growth of Indian cinema's revenues is primarily due to the gradual increase of export earnings of Hindi films, which reached its peak and reached about $1.2 billion, which is $17 billion approximately, rupees, last year. This is more than double that reached of rupees 8 billion recorded in 2004, when serious data began to be collected. The projected estimate of earnings was expected to reach rupees 20 billion by 2025, before COVID struck. All this is a direct result of the advent of major US studios like Disney, Foxstar, Warner Brothers, Sony, Viacom, and Universal in India. Their coming has led to a corporatization of Indian film industry, and their expertise in tapping into foreign markets has created a paradigm shift in film economics in Asia. Amir Khan's Dangal hit the jackpot in China, raking in $200 million, and Secret Superstar followed with another rich haul of $125 million, with an estimated 25 million tickets sold. Given the divine status accorded to Buddha, India's greatest export to China, it should not surprise anyone why our culture is so popular in China. In addition, the heroic role played by such humanitarians as Dr. Dwarkanath Kotnis, who gave up his own life saving hundreds of Chinese lives during Japanese invasion of China during the World War, still has a resonance, as evidenced by the Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to honor Kotnis' sister Manorama Kotnis in Pune during his visit in September 2014. The film Dr. Kotnis Ki Amar Kahani, made by V. Shantaram to immortalize the brave doctor in 1946, was the first film to be screened in China after the Maoist revolution and even had a special place in the chairman's heart. Nehru was the first to recognize the new communist government, paving the way for his Panchashil agreement in 1954 over Tibet, and the euphoria of Zhou Enlai's visit in 1960, which ended with his self-admitted Himalayan blunder with the Sino-Indian War in 1962, which cost India a third of Ladakh. The Cold War has turned into a deep freeze of economic and cultural relations, and the deadlock was only broken in 1971 with Tahir Hussein's Caravan, and it was followed by Noori in 79 and Disco Dancer in 82. Then it was Amir's turn to cash in with Lagan in 2001, which became the first film to have a nationwide release in China. When Three Idiots released in 2009, China was only the 15th largest film market due to widespread piracy, which in fact made the Three Idiots, cult figures for the Chinese, making it the 12th all-time favorite film. The Great Wall turned into a great ball for Amir thereafter, as Dhoom 3 in 2013, PK in 2014 grossed rupees 2 billion, and Dangal in 2016 hit the rupees 10 billion jackpot and $100 million all told. Traditionally, the export earnings have accounted for less than 10% of the film industry's turnover in Hindi cinema. But during the last 2 decades, Hindi cinema has gained access to markets full of people from Pakistan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, in addition to the Indian diaspora. In the post-COVID scenario, with film production and distribution returning to normal, Hindi films could extend their global reach throughout South Asia, Africa, Russia, Eastern Europe, and even South America. Does it sound like a fantasy? How could this incredible scenario unfold? Well, taking a leaf from its Hollywood mentors, Hindi cinema can dub its product in multiple languages like Spanish, African, and even Russian, which made Raj Kapoor's Avara, Mera Naam Joker, and Sunil Dutt's Reshma Aur Shera, to name a few films, the most popular Indian cultural icons in the Soviet era. Home video, with better distribution outlets, has posted 30 to 50% growth over the last decade to account for nearly 20% of the total export revenues of Indian cinema. The US and Canada remain the primary markets, accounting for 30% of the exports, followed by UK with 25% and Mauritius and Dubai with 10% each. The emerging big markets are South Africa, Russia, Fiji, New Zealand, and Australia, which, thanks to cricket and Bollywood merchandising, is becoming a gold mine. Now, a brief history of Hindi cinema exports. The first Hindi film to be commercially released abroad was Dharti Ke Lal by K.A. Abbas. Based on the Bengal famine, it was released in the Soviet Union in 1949. But the first film to have a global release in multiple countries was Mehboob Khan's Aan in 1952, starring Dilip Kumar and Nimmi. It was subtitled in 17 languages and released in 28 countries, including the UK, US, France, and Japan. The director's next film, Mother India, in 1957, had the distinction of getting an Academy Award nomination and was released in Europe, Russia, Eastern Bloc countries, and in Latin America. Until the 1980s, however, the largest overseas market for Hindi films was the Soviet Union. After Dharti Ke Lal, the first film to break into the hearts and minds of the Russian people was Raj Kapoor's Awara in 1954. The film's title song, Awara Hoon, remains popular all over Eastern Europe and Turkey to this day. Nehru sent a high-powered Hindi film delegation led by Raj Kapoor, Dev Anand, Balraj Sahni, Nargis and Durga Khote, which was taken on a tour of the Soviet Union by Sovexport Films and gained the status of folk heroes. For 4 decades after that, more than 300 Indian films were released in the Soviet Union, of which 190 were in Hindi, and the Russians took its colorful costumes, songs and dances to their hearts. Among the few foreign films to penetrate the Iron Curtain and sell more than 20 million tickets, 50 were from India, the highest from any nation, compared to 41 from Hollywood. This is the impact Hindi cinema made, which is better than Hollywood's impact in Russia. Hindi films were routinely released with more than 100 prints, with some of the most popular breaking the 1,000 print barrier. Some of the hits were romances like Love in Simla, Sita aur Geeta, Sunil Dutt's Reshma aur Shera, and Raj Kapoor's Mera Naam Joker. At the height of the Brezhnev era in the 1970s, imported films from its socialist satellite countries like India, accounted for as much as 35% of ticket sales in the Soviet Union. The highest grossing Hindi film in the Soviet era was Rahi Masoom Raza's Disco Dancer, which made dancing star Mithun Chakrabarti almost a cult figure in Russia, with teenagers copying his moves to its title song, I Am a Disco Dancer, which became a smash hit, rivaling the popularity of Awara Hoon. As India and the Soviet Union already had a barter trade agreement, the idea of co-producing films on suitable subjects was an ongoing affair. Starting with the Sohrab Modi epic Pardesi in 1957, there were a series of such films, as Black Mountain in 1971, Rikki Tikki Tavi in 1975, Eastward Beyond the Ganges in 1975, Ali Baba and 40 Thieves in 1980, Soni Bahiwal in 1984, Shikari in 1990, ending with Big B himself in Ajuba in 1991 as the Soviet Union itself disintegrated. In spite of the breakup, old ancestral ties have not been forgotten, and Indian films continue to be a big draw in Eastern Bloc countries. Uzbekistan is a case in point where Hindi films are still screened in local theaters, dubbed in local languages, and its songs are broadcast all over the country on all the TV stations and fill the radio airwaves also. There are more than 50 private film studios in Uzbekistan that produce at least a film a year, and people still remember Mithun's disco dancer and Ali Baba, seen by millions. In fact, traditional Russian women and families are still loyal to Hindi films, according to a recent survey. In fact, less than a decade ago, a prominent Russian media group, Red Media, launched a full-scale Bollywood TV channel to be produced locally, inspired by Hindi cinema content. This is something strange, that there is even a special satellite channel, called India TV, as Indian song and dance-based shows are so popular, like Antakshari and Dance Masti. They are a rage among the youth in Russia. Even Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, on a visit to India, took time off from his diplomatic duties to mix it up with Bollywood divas and shake a hip and match steps, as did Hillary Clinton and John Kerry at an Ambani marriage function, as those videos went viral globally. In 2009, a Bollywood-inspired soap opera, Caminho das India's Way, became the top-rated TV show in Brazil. With 60% of the market share, Caminho sparked off a massive interest in Indian culture, as Hindi words like Acha, Theek Hai, and Bhagwan Ke Liye became part of the street slang among the TV boppers on the streets and beaches of Sao Paulo and Rio. The passion for Hindi film music reached a frenzy when it fused with Brazil's soccer mania, as Indian music director A.R. Rahman became a national hero in Brazil when he was picked to compose Brazil's official team anthem for its 2018 Soccer World Cup campaign. The signs of this were evident from the time of the Coke-Pepsi revolution in India in the 1990s. The largest overseas market for Hindi films was soon turning into the South Asian diaspora in the West. Shah Rukh and Salman led the charge, starting with Dar in 1993 and Hum Aapke Hain Kaun in 1994 to the smash hit Dilwale Dulhania in 95. Shah Rukh's Dil Se became the first Indian film to enter the UK top 10 box office charts. By 2000, the overseas export market for Hindi films had already reached $100 million annually. Meera Nair's Monsoon Wedding with Nasiruddin Shah was the first in a series of co-productions, and Shah Rukh's My Name is Khan became the first Hindi film to collect rupees 1 billion at the box office overseas, followed by Amir's Three Idiots. A new century of Indian culture influencing the West began, as it had in the 60s with Ravi Shankar's Sitar Power and Beatlemania. From the lofty heights of Indian classical music, it came down to the MTV crazy masses hooked on soap operas. It led to the revival of the American musical film. Baz Luhrmann credited an item song from the Hindi film China Gate for inspiring his cult classic Moulin Rouge, starring Nicole Kidman. It sparked a wave of a new genre of Hollywood musicals like Chicago, Rent, and Dreamgirls. As A.R. Rahman came into the limelight, the world-famous British opera director Andrew Lloyd Webber chose him to compose music for his Bombay Dreams, and a musical version of Hum Aapke Hain Kaun was staged in London's West End. The biggest breakthrough of sorts was in 2008 when Danny Boyle's Slumdog Millionaire called Hobbit to Hindi gangster cinema. It won 4 Golden Globes and 8 Academy Awards, including 2 for Rahman. It was a throwback to the 1980s when John Woo based A Better Tomorrow on a Hong Kong parody, The Big Brothers, which claimed to be a spoof on Big B's Diwar. Technopop pioneers Harumi Hosono and Ruichi Sakamoto of the Yellow Magic Orchestra produced an electronic album, Cochin Moon, based on a fusion of computer music and Hindi film songs. The rap group Truth Hurts used Lata Mangeshkar's song Thoda Resham Lagta Hai from the film Jyoti and as a chorus for their rap hit Addictive in 2002. The Black Eyed Peas won a Grammy in 2005 for their song Don't Funk With My Heart, based on Helen's dance items in the films Dawn and Aparadh. The Kronos Quartet used R.D. Burman songs in their 2005 album You've Stolen My Heart, and the joke went stale finally when Rahman copied himself in his 2000 album Filmy Music as the parody of the so-called Bollywood muzak became an absurd cliche. So how can Hollywood capitalize on the Indian Renaissance? The Hindi cinema's success story in China is something Hollywood can do a lot to capitalize on. China is the world's second biggest movie market after the US. It presently has 41,000 cinema screens, which is quadruple, 4 times that in India, which barely has 14,000 screens for a larger movie-going audience. The situation only gets worse in India when you consider the fact that only 10,000 screens are active or in operation at any given time, and of these, only 6,000 screens are reportedly available for Hindi cinema. Where there is an abject need, there is a tremendous opportunity. It's a classic adage of venture capitalism. The Swachh Bharat mission was a toilet boom for British and German sanitary ware companies as they raked in hundreds of billions of dollars. Given the hunger for entertainment in India, making up the huge shortfall of 35,000 cinema screens for India to catch up with China, gives theatre chains in America a great chance to invest in India. The relatively cheaper cost of land, labor and construction promises to be a big bonanza waiting to be tapped. By tying movie-going habits to other recreational activities like bowling, roller skating, video game parlors and the like, India's colossal youth market of 500 million could yield big dividends for American Western entrepreneurs. This youth audience, as we have explained, has increasingly come to reject the Bollywood drug mafia's lifestyle and culture offered to them as a panacea. The string of big budget flops and the downward slide of box office figures for Hindi films in its own backyard is a serious cause for introspection. The national outcry against the biggest Bollywood stars for their silence on the recent drug busts and murders in Dilsel town is not something that foreign advertisers and media companies can afford to ignore any longer. If they do, their brands and their products will face calls for censure and boycott, as happened with Chinese TikToks in Ladakh. The Indian market cannot be taken for granted anymore, and consumer anger has hardened. The roots of the problem have been exposed. Nepotism, groupism, and cronyism has stifled the creative spirit of the Bollywood cabal. Their rabble-rousing and cheap political posturing has been rejected. They have been branded anti-national and they have turned into a rogues gallery. The angry fans are now questioning how such mediocrities became celebrities in the first place. Multinationals and foreign brands have begun cancelling contracts with tarnished stars. Being an addict is no longer fashionable. Bollywood's mask has been ripped off. But the problem is it's full of imposters. Mediocrities have become celebrities. They are in cahoots with influence peddlers. Their agents and lackeys have infiltrated every studio and agency to corrupt and corrode it from within. It's nothing more than a crime syndicate which uses all the mafia techniques of honey trapping, gaslighting, extortion and blackmail to impose its will and maintain its hegemony. Being trapped in such a vicious cycle, there is no room for fresh talent to make its mark. The very lifeblood of creativity has been sucked out of the system by culture vultures and vampires cannibalizing the film industry. It's the silence of the lambs, and Lecter's spectre rules. Being unaware of the ethnic equations, local customs, social mores, and moral edicts, the studio's corporate heads abroad in England, America, Australia, etc., have no clue about the scams and rip-offs they are being subjected to. The clock is ticking, and the Bollywood bubble is about to burst. If the corporate heads don't act soon and decisively, they'll become extinct. Nothing lasts forever, not even your dreams. It's time they got their act together. They are losing audiences faster than a fire alarm in a smoky theater. Movies no longer enjoy a monopoly. Other forms of entertainment have grabbed their market share. Satellite TV, internet channels, and pay-per-view is the new name of the game. India's youth is no exception. They are hip to a trip, but not a drip. To be trendy, you have to be friendly. They are looking for big scores, not big bores. The Bollywood product is in urgent need of an upgrade. It's gone stale from dyslexia. Senility is no excuse for stupidity. You can't reach an old dog. You can't teach him new tricks. You need to reinvent the system. Bollywood is in its last gasp. Like a COVID patient in urgent need of a respirator. The film industry is driven by fresh content and an innovative technology. Faking it is not making it. Cheap imitation and plagiarism is out of fashion. Original content, cultural relevance, and slick execution is the need of the hour. And time is running out. China's success story in this regard is like salt in the wounds of the Bollywood dream factory, now forced to eat their humble pie. But the BFI, on the other hand, the Indian film industry and its related associations that are involved in the Indian Renaissance are aware of the ancestral ties between these old neighboring states and sees this as a win-win situation for both to learn from. The US can play a very important and constructive role in this and use their competitive advantage not to isolate but forge a common market with both India and China, which will benefit all three. While India's film industry, like America's, dates back to the early 1900s, China is a relatively new entrant. Yet its total box office collection has crossed $8 billion, second only to the US, which tops it $12 billion. While India is a slow starter with 8 films distributed so far in China with a limit of 5 films per year, the US has provided 156 films, including those co-produced with other countries. As the universal success of Little Buddha, 7 Years in Tibet, Kundun, Zen, and Samsara has shown, films on Buddhist themes could be a fertile area for Sino-Indian-US cooperation for the three countries to mend their broken fences. After the phenomenal success of Indian films in China, the value of Indian film exports was projected to reach the $3 billion mark by 2025, with new markets being explored in Japan, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Thailand, Mauritius, Tanzania, and Kenya, in addition to the established markets of US, UK, UAE, and South Africa before COVID struck. The concept of comparative advantage has been widely accepted as one of the foundations of international trade. A country can enhance its trade status and value chain of its exports by tapping into cultural and geopolitical affinities that can bind them closer to their trading partners across geographical and economic barriers and boundaries. These affinities can also be stimulated as part of a regional strategy to create a trade zone, as can be seen in the Eurozone, ASEAN, NAFTA, and other alliances. As the cliche goes, the future may not be what it used to be, given the state of the global economy after the COVID pandemic. To make matters worse, after Boris Johnson, it is now Donald Trump's turn to be humbled by the virus. He even lost the election. But if the world must return to normal and regain its joy for living, the film industry will no doubt have to play Cupid's role in making love blossom. Flowers bloom was Chairman Mao's call when he launched the Cultural Revolution, his fateful mistake in China. Given the volatile state of relations the three countries, India, China, USA, seem to be trapped in, one hopes the broken promise of a warm spring and summer does not end in a chilling deep freeze of a long and bitter winter of discontent.